Good afternoon, everybody. I think we're almost ready to begin. I see the persons piling up on the YouTube page. Happy to have you. Deidre, you can now begin.
Alrighty, thank you so much. And good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the UE Commuters EAC's Sponsorship Week 2022. And we are all the way at day 3. And it is my pleasure to be here to guide you as your hosts, as today we will be looking at tackling the scholarship interview. I know a lot of us can get nervous when it comes to interviews. We don't know what to say, we don't know what to do, we don't know what to present. But guess what? Don't you worry. We have two wonderful speakers with us today that will guide you efficiently, and you'll be able to give exactly what you need to give at your scholarship interview. Today we have Mr. Richard Palmer, uh, and we have the Island Advantage Coaching organization. But before we get into or get right into the meat of the matter, how are you guys doing? I hope you're doing well, and I hope you've been searching up those scholarships that you know that you qualify for, and not be afraid to take the step that you need to take to be a scholarship recipient this upcoming academic year. So, welcome again, and it is my pleasure to be your guide this afternoon. So let's get straight into the meat of the matter. Who will be speaking with you today? Let's get to know our panelists a little bit more. So, firstly, let me introduce to you Mr. Richard Palmer. Well, let's start off with Island Advantage, rather. Island Advantage provides professional and interview coaching sessions that helped clients landed roles at global companies and successfully navigated the job market in their home country. Individuals enrolled in our academic coaching sessions have been accepted to institutions in the UK and US and have been awarded prestigious scholarships such as the Rhodes Scholarship and Chevening Scholarship. At Advantage, at Island Advantage rather, we believe that your culture and country, no matter where you are from, is a source of competitive advantage. We coach you with one goal and one goal only to showcase your unique perspective to the world through the art of storytelling and communication. So that's Island Advantage, and I cannot wait to hear what Island Advantage Coaching has to present today. It is going to be an awesome seminar. But no, we're moving over to Mr. Richard Palmer. Wow. So, Richard is passionate about education and continues to seek opportunities to reach out to persons who may be in need of scaffolding or motivation to realize their fullest potential. He's a trained teacher of French, Spanish, and English as foreign languages with a track record for involvement in youth development and volunteerism. He currently lives and works in France as a language teacher, English, French as a foreign language, and Spanish. So that is Mr. Richard Palmer, who we'll be hearing from first this afternoon. And please make Mr. Richard Palmer feel welcome. How are you, sir? I'm handing over to you right now.
All right, thank you so much, Deidre. I trust that you can hear me clearly. So we're going to be looking at, as Deidre said, we're going to be looking at how to tackle your interview. And I'm going to be sharing my screen with my slides. We're going to be looking at, okay. Yes. Let me know if you're seeing my screen, Deidre.
Yes, I'm seeing your screen.
All right, great. So we're looking at how to interview success, and we're looking for interview success, scholarships and beyond. So we're going to be looking at how to, perform well in your interview for your scholarships. As Deidre would have said, you'd have been searching for scholarships, you'd have been applying. And if you're successful in your applications, usually some scholarships tend to ask you to attend an interview. And this is the part we're here to prepare you for today. So we're going to be looking at, just to see what I thought would have had more persons on the chat. But even if you're on YouTube watching, we're going to be taking a poll to see how many persons, what's your status? So are you pending an interview? Do you have one interview scheduled already? Have you got 2? Have you got 3? Have you more than 3? Have you completed any interviews? So by way of using the emojis indicated, you can just share in the chat what's your status in terms of interviews, so we can know the crowd that we're working with today. And you can tell what's happening on YouTube if persons are sharing. But I think in general, most persons should be hearing from scholarship organizations about the status of their application and upcoming interviews. I'm not seeing anyone sharing as yet. Okay. All right, so we're going to start. So hopefully we all have interviews coming up. And if not yet, then we hope that we'll be selected for interviews. So we're going to start with looking at the purpose for interviews. So generally, you've been selected for an interview. You're not just showing up to talk to a panel of persons. There is a purpose for this interview. There's a rationale behind the interview. And so as the interviewee, you need to be aware of, why am I attending this interview? What do I expect, or what are they expecting from me, and what do I expect to happen at the end of this interview? So the first thing to know is that the interviews generally is an exchange between you and the panel, or it could be individual interviewers, or it could be a group of panel of persons interviewing you. So it's an exchange. They want to get to know you. They want to get to understand who you are off the paper, off the application. You've submitted your application, and now they want to interact with you, to get to understand who you are, hear how you present yourself, etc. It's a review and it's an assessment. So they want to review what you've put on paper, how you present this. You've said you've been involved in a host of activities. You've been involved in a lot of initiatives. They want to get the opportunity to hear from you. And they also want to review how it is that these activities, or what you have on paper, how is it that you present these, and how they line up in terms of what they are looking for in their selection criteria. So it's a review of all of what you've put on paper, how you present that on the day. Then they're assessing how it is that you meet the criteria that they have selected. The assessment generally starts before you go to the interview. So they would have seen your application. They would have done some proofreading of what you've submitted. And so today, the day of the interview, you're going to back up what you've put on paper, and they're assessing to see how it is that you convey. If it's a needs-based scholarship, how do you convey the need that you have indicated that you have? If it is an academic-based scholarship, how it is that you present yourself in terms of your academic pursuits? How do you demonstrate your academic prowess on the day of the interview? And then they'll be assessing to see how it is that you match in terms of their criteria, and also in terms of the other applications or applicants that they have. And finally, the interview will lead to some form of ranking. At the end, there is some form of ranking it, and the interview helps with the ranking. Oftentimes, it helps with also determining maybe how much grant you will be awarded, the value of your scholarship. It could determine a lot of that aspect of things, how it is that you fare out in the end of the interview. So next, we're going to be looking at first impression. So I was looking at the idea of first impressions and how people make first impressions. And this idea of an airport came up in terms of how people tend to get first impressions of us. And so our first impression generally is what is lasting, is what persons have of us after we've departed. So that's what we need to think about. When you depart the room, when you leave the place for the interview, what are they going to be thinking about you as a candidate? And so this impression, this lasting impression that you want to leave, you have to think about, how is it that I'm going to leave this lasting impression from the arrival? So from I get to the interview location, how am I conveying, how am I showing them, or how am I leaving a lasting first impression? So you need to think about this from your arrival to the interview location or venue or room. A part of the first impression that you want to leave or that you can help you to leave a good impression is what we call baggage, or in this case, we're talking about intellectual baggage. So when you go to an interview, you need to be thinking about how can I intellectually, what kind of intellectual baggage am I taking to this interview to demonstrate to the panel of judges that I am ready, I'm willing, I'm able, and I qualify for this scholarship, not just on paper, but off paper. I represent what it is that I have on paper. I'm here to demonstrate that I am this person. I am who I said I am on paper. The financial need or whatever it is that you've articulated, you can also articulate that in person and do it in such an intellectual way that they will have a very lasting first impression of you. It also has to do with your check-in. So check-in has to do with when you get to the interview, how do you greet people? How do you interact with the other persons who possibly are being interviewed on that day? That also ties into how you leave a good first impression from the moment you show up. And the final aspect that they spoke about was the transfer. So what is it that you're leaving in your transfer? And this has to do with when you're sharing with the adjudicators. What are you transferring to them? What are you leaving with them during this exchange, so that when you depart the room, they will have something to remember you about, remember you of, but remember you by after you've departed. So that's how we look at lasting first impressions. We start from the departure and work from arrival, luggage, check-in, and transfer. So now we're going to be looking at some general interview tips. As I said, most of us would have done interviews already. And so we're always looking to improve. And so some of these tips you would have heard already, you probably would have known, you probably would have done before. And so we're just going to go over some key tips that you need to pay attention to. So the first three we're looking at is research, prepare, and practice. And so research, we're looking at, you need to research the organization that's giving you the scholarship or is inviting you for this interview. You need to ensure that you get some information and some background as to what the organization is about, what are their missions, what's their value, what's the purpose of this award or this scholarship that they have out on the market for applications. You also need to, what's a good way to research or to plan for your interview, you need to research questions. So you research possible questions that could be posed in an interview. Again, it depends on the type of interview, the type of scholarship specifically. Is it needs-based? Is it merit-based? Is it an academic award? So you research questions related to that type of interview. And then, of course, you would prepare and then you practice. Another aspect you need to research, which is really, really good, is research past applicants, past winners of these scholarships. Reach out to them, try to get some tips from them, and get some understanding of what the interview is actually like or was like for them. So it's a good way to find people who have been awarded these scholarships. You may know some of them, they go to your school, they may be popular on social media, some of them, depending on the type of scholarship. Lots of the applicants, we see them on social media, they share their images, the organizations share who their winners are, and over the years, so you can find people who have been selected for scholarships that you're applying for. And that's a good way to get some first-hand information as to how to prepare and what to expect for the interviews. So you've done your research, you need to prepare. Of course, if you do proper research, then you'll be able to properly prepare for what it is and what to expect on the day. And in your preparation, you're trying to cover a lot of ground, cover a lot of information that would be relevant to that type of scholarship, the types of questions, and ensure that you're preparing to get to, for example, know yourself, for example. So this has to do with preparing, get to understand what am I going to articulate, what am I going to be talking about based on the research that you would have done, the questions you would have found. And then after you've prepared all of that, you also need to practice. So it helps to think about it. Okay, these might be questions, these might be the situation, but you need to practice. A big part of doing well at interviews is practicing and having your answers, for example, you're familiar with the answer. Not to say swat the answers, but you're familiar with the answer. For example, a typical question might be, tell me about yourself. And we all might think, oh, it's easy. I know myself. I can speak about myself. And then you go to an interview and then they say, okay, present yourself. And then you start to ramble. So it's good to practice, maybe say to a friend, call somebody, tell them, okay, I'm going to present myself. Let me know. do you think this is a fair presentation of myself? So practice, as we say, makes perfect. But this is also a good way to prepare for interviews. Practice your answers and so that you're familiar with what the possible answers you might have in your head. If a question that you've practiced is asked in the interview, you'll be familiar with this type of information already. And so it's easy for you to, make your answers flow and to logically organize what you want to say. And in practicing, there is a method that is used to give concrete answers in an interview, or in general, give concrete responses to questions. And this is called the STAR model or the STAR method. And so the STAR represents status, task, action, and results. And so in this method, it's basically you're using context to start. And I heard we spoke about storytelling with Island Advantage, and I guess they will allude a lot more to this in terms of storytelling. So you need to set a context. So you're answering a question, they ask you for a concrete example of how something affected you or how you were involved in something. You need to start by giving a context. So make it about yourself, you contextualize it. How is it that this question pertains to you and your context? Then you're going to be looking at some tasks. So what did you do in this situation? Looking at some actions. So what are some of the actions involved? So maybe your individual action and how it impacted the general action of this situation. And then you want to look at some results. So what did these actions that you did in this particular context, how did that affect you or affect the persons that you were serving? So for example, they ask you, why would you be an ideal candidate for this scholarship? So for example, you could give some context. Again, you make it about yourself, make it about the organization. So you start by saying, okay, so I understand that this scholarship is for persons who are involved in volunteerism. And I think I consider myself someone who has a good track record in volunteering. I've been involved in, you give the clubs that you've been involved in terms of your voluntary service. You give the tasks that you do in this club. Then you can give some of the actions that your club does. You can give some of the results. And then you sum up by saying, okay, having done all of this, I think I have demonstrated such a track record for voluntary service. And this scholarship is for someone who has such a strong track record like myself. And how this scholarship would help you now as an individual to, as a result of your voluntary prowess, how you would use it to continue to maybe give back, to continue to succeed and to do well. And so you want to always look at how it is that you can give a concrete response. It's not just a yes or no, but you really want to get down into contextualizing the situation, contextualizing your response, giving specific actions or tasks related to what you've done and to the context and also the results. And you can read up more about the STAR method and how you can use it to tackle some of the more tricky questions in interviews when you are supposed to give a concrete situation or to highlight a concrete point. When you're using this STAR method, and in general, when you're answering the questions, I put two icons here. This is for time and this is for language. You need to pay attention to taking time out to respond. So a question that requires a concrete answer is not one that you're going to start responding to immediately as you're asked. You need to take some time to reflect on how you're going to, put this question, put your answer into context and situate it so that it's clear and logical. And this again goes back to practicing. This helps. If you've practiced 1 or 2 or 3 questions like this, then it's easier for you to be able to contextualize and give tasks and actions and results when you're asked to present. I've indicated language as an important aspect when presenting your responses, because oftentimes we do interviews and we're not paying attention to our language. You are a tertiary student applying for a tertiary level funding. You need to show the panel that you're able to use, as we spoke about baggage, you need to demonstrate, this is where you need to showcase your intellectual baggage, that you can logically organize a response, you can clearly articulate your thoughts. So you're not going to be using language like, oh, you understand, what I mean? It's like, you want to use language that demonstrates that you are intellectually capable of articulating what it is that you want to say. You can logically present your answer. You are giving concrete situations, context, task, results, and you're demonstrating what it is expected of a tertiary level student pursuing a tertiary level education. So please pay attention to taking time out to practice so that you can use language. And especially if you're not someone who is comfortable always, giving or using some level of vocabulary, for example, it takes practice to integrate this into your normal responses. So you need to practice using this type of language, and it also goes to writing your essays and so on. Ensure that you are using, tertiary level language. So next, we're going to be looking at some other tips. So yes, we're looking at time. So we just spoke about time, and time in this aspect, you need to show up on time, respect the timelines that are given. So if they send you an email to confirm a time or possible date of the event or for the interview, ensure that you try to respond and to show that you are a proactive person. Ensure that you show up on time, respect their time, and so on. So that's important when doing interviews. Questions, ensure that you prepare questions beforehand to ask the panel or to clarify. And again, in your questions, ensure that your questions are, intellectually developed. You're asking pertinent questions that demonstrate that you have really thought about the organization or the scholarship or the situation that you've been put in to ask a question that is pertinent, relevant, and intellectually maybe stimulating. You get the panel to really think about an idea or something in your field, maybe something in the field. It depends on the type of scholarship that you're applying for. But pose a question that is really intellectually thought-provoking, that the panel would really have to maybe take some time to say, interesting question, and to get them to respond to your question during this interview. So that's important as well. I always encourage people to work with additional documents. For example, sometimes we submit an application and you may have had an old transcript. You submitted it just because, that was a part of the requirement, but your grades, you got a new grade or some additional grades were published and you have a different transcript. Work with it. This shows you are continuing to advance your application, even in light of what you already submitted. You bring your updated transcript if you have that, or if that's your situation. Something like your CV, you can work with. I have done interviews where persons forgot to print my CV or they didn't have it on file, and I had it, and they were like, "Oh, interesting, you're very prepared." So it goes again to setting a sort of impression on the panel to say the type of person you are. So if you do have not outstanding, but documents that would have changed over the course of time, you can bring those. In general, if you do have a portfolio, it depends again on the type of scholarship that you're applying for. Some scholarships might ask you to, or it would be good if you have like a portfolio of your work or what you've done so far. If you have documents to prove that sort of thing. And depends, for example, postdoctoral scholarships or postgrad scholarships, they may ask you for a research paper. If you have publications that you have published, you can work with these type of documents to also substantiate and to demonstrate to the panel that you take what you do serious and you take your time and you are serious about getting this funding for yourself. And overall, generally, we speak about etiquette. This is something that we often belabor when we're doing interviews, being courteous, being polite, using, as we said again, language. You want to use polite language and formal language. So may I, could I, is it possible, that kind of thing when you're asking for assistance or asking just posing questions in general. Try to be very formal and very polite in terms of your exchanges, not just with the panel, but anyone that you encounter on the day of the interview. So those are some of the other tips. Next, we're moving on to, yes, so some interviews don't, I think we did yes. So some of it don't. So don't under-prepare. So as I said earlier, that was the first thing we mentioned, being prepared. Oftentimes we think, okay, it's an interview, it's just an exchange to talk to the panel, and we under-prepare, we underestimate the weight of the interview and the outcome of the scholarship award. So you need to ensure that do not under-prepare. It's best that you're over-prepared than you are under-prepared. Try to be present in the moment. You're not distracted on the day of the interview. You are there, you're with the panel, you're 100%. It can be nerve-wracking to sitting in front of maybe 3, 4 persons doing an interview, but try to be present, try to be there. You only have the time of the interview. After that, everything else is done. So ensure that in the moment you show up, you're present, you don't have any distractions, you don't have your phone, your cell phone's on silent, or you don't have it at all with you. Ensure that you're just there, you're present, you're in the moment, and ensure that the exchange that you're having is a meaningful exchange. Do not undersell yourself. I generally tell people you are the CEO of You Incorporated. This is your brand. This is you. Do not be afraid to talk about yourself, to present yourself in a very advantageous way. Take what you have, take the skills, the knowledge, the whatever you've done in your professional, personal life. Ensure that you use it to sell yourself. Do not feel as if, oh, I'm going to come off as if I'm arrogant or boasting. This is the opportunity. Oftentimes, you submit an application, persons already have larger acumen or business acumen or professional, personal acumen than what you might have. This is your opportunity to present yourself, to show how it is that you compete against the other participants or the other applicants that they have. So don't feel afraid to sell yourself and to talk about what it is that you have done, what you have accomplished. Oftentimes, we cannot write all that we've done, all that we've accomplished on our application forms. And so the interview is a good opportunity to reiterate some of these points, to show the panel how it is that you stand out, despite what you have on the form. If you were not able to, for example, include all of your achievements and professional and personal academic accolades on your application form. So do not undersell yourself. Another thing I also advise, do not ask obvious questions. So as I said about questions, ensure that they are thought-provoking, something that's going to stir up some form of discussion, some form of exchange that's going to be meaningful in the interview. Do not ask obvious questions. For example, so what is one of your company's value? That is something that you could have researched. That is something that you can see on the company's website if you checked it. So the interviewers are going to think, but this person asking about values, like you could have checked the website, for example. So try not to ask questions that you could have gotten the answer outside of the interview. This could have been something that you could have checked on Google, for example. So ensure that the questions you're asking or that you plan to ask are not very obvious and that the answers could have been found outside of the interview already. And again, try to see the bigger picture, try to see the purpose. Ensure, do not forget the purpose of the interview, as we spoke about earlier, is really an exchange. It's really an opportunity for the panel and for yourself to even before the interview, to assess yourself, how you think you would match up in terms of the type of scholarship that you're applying for. So remember that the purpose of the scholarship is really an assessment of how it is that you match the criteria or match the mission that this company is on in terms of their financial obligation or financial award that they're giving. And in order to rank everyone that's there, so the interview, the purpose is going to be to rank. So ensure that you're always thinking in such a competitive way. You're always thinking how it is that you can state and present yourself in such a way that you have a competitive advantage over the person who is coming after you or the person who went before you in general. And I think these are the tips that I would have covered. I have 2 questions after this that I wanted 2 volunteers to answer using what we looked at as the STAR method. I'm not sure if that's going to be possible, but that's the end of the presentation. If the questions are possible, I'm not sure what Island Advantage has lined up, but maybe afterwards we could do that if that's possible. I will stick around for that. So this is the end of the presentation. So thank you so much for your time and for listening.
Thank you so much for such an informative presentation. Actually, I'm sure a lot of persons, you have your questions. Don't worry, we will have the question and answer segment right after the presentation by Alan Advantage Coaching. But just to quickly go over some things that I had written down from this presentation. Remember, you are the CEO of You Inc. Wow, you are the creator of your brand. You're responsible for your brand. So it's very important that you do your best at selling yourself at these interviews. And the best way to do that is to research, prepare, and practice. Contact past winners, see how best you can prepare, not necessarily sorting these responses, but becoming familiar, as practice is key. And then we'll have the STAR method, which we're looking forward to doing closer to the end of the seminar. And also, we got some tips in terms of question preparation at the end of the interview. Remember to have pertinent, relevant, intellectually sound questions, and try not to ask questions that you could have found elsewhere. Thank you so much for such an informative presentation. And now I'm inviting Island Advantage. This is your time, and we're looking forward to learning so much from you.
All right, wonderful. I really enjoyed the session by Mr. Palmer. I think it lends really well into what we're going to be talking about today. So, Island Advantage Coaching, we're all about creating the future that you've always been dreaming about. And just like Mr. Palmer says, I think education is the best way for us to do that, especially when we are choosing fantastic degrees and then we want someone else to pay for our education. It's likely, you know, a win-win situation for us. So what we do is we're going to focus on the power of your individual story to help you achieve academic and professional goals. So today's session is really, you know, we're going to do a little bit of some activities. So some folks are going to come off of mute, hopefully, and then we can just do a couple of sessions. So where Mr. Palmer talked about, you know, scholarship do's and don'ts and tricks, we're going to go into some how to answer certain questions, bit of an exercise and a framework for you to use the next time you have a scholarship interview or professional interview as well. All right, so far, since working with our clients, we have helped folks land Rhodes scholarships, and this is a pretty prestigious scholarship that, you know, Caribbean nationals are eligible for, and they, you know, it's a full ride tuition, including living in the UK at Oxford University, and then there's Shevening, and these are postgraduate scholarships. Now, obviously, some individuals on the line here, they're looking for support in undergraduate scholarships or graduate scholarships, but the same rules apply, right? And a lot of our clients are Caribbean nationals who want to study abroad. And so the same tips that Mr. Palmer gave are the same tips, you know, that apply universally. And we're really just gonna be able to practice and use these tips and tricks as you are, where you are locally in Jamaica or otherwise. All right, so these are two examples of folks who got scholarships. Now, the individual on the left, that he got the Shevening Scholarship in 2021. The individual on the right, hailing from Jamaica, she got a merit-based scholarship. Now, a merit-based scholarship is, you know, you apply to the school, and then based off of your academic performance or certainly your story, how you present yourself, they will shave off some of your tuition expense. So if, you know, if you were going to be studying for 2 years, they might, you know, pay for 1 year as part of it, as part of a merit-based scholarship. So purpose of scholarship interview, just as Mr. Palmer said, it's really about sharing more about you and demonstrating why you are the best candidate that can uphold the values of the scholarship. So if you think about it, you know, it's a competitive world. It's not only you that are, you know, if you're called to interview, it means that they're interested in what you have to say. You wrote an essay that certainly piqued the interest of the judging committee. And they're like, hey, I want to see if this individual is just like they say they are on paper. And I want to see what they know about the scholarship. I want to see if, you know, if we give them this scholarship, how will they uphold the values and how will they uphold the, you know, the reputation of the institution as they go. So this is what we're going to be doing today. So, you know, they're commonly asked scholarship questions. There are quite a number of scholarship questions that you might get posed along the way, but given that we have about 30 minutes or so, we're going to focus on these three. Most interviews, whether professional or academic, they start off with, you know, tell me about yourself. Now, if you are doing an academic scholarship, and maybe even professional scholarships, they might even ask, what are your short and long-term goals? And then you might get some variation of the question, why should we choose you for this scholarship? Or what do you think that you offer that's better or different than the other candidates? So we're going to get started with the first one. And my philosophy is, you're going to make yourself heard. And a big part of making yourself heard is to use the power of your voice, your experiences, and share about yourself. So I have a framework here that I always ask folks to use. So if you have a pen, paper, you're on your computer, wherever, pull up a Word document. And I want you to kind of write down bullet point, so current position. If you're a student, let's say you're a student that is also working, what is your current position? Education. So let's say that you are, you're currently studying your undergraduate at UWI Mona campus in computer science. So I'm a STEM queen. I did my undergrad in STEM. So you're going to see me use computer science a lot, but I know there's certainly other degree programs. So whatever your degree program is, note that down. So, and then experience or aspiring experience. So think about this as, on my graduation, I aspire to be a software engineer, or I aspire to work in this organization as a consultant, whatever is your aspiring experience. And then I like to say, sprinkle in a little bit of fun, something that is interesting about you. So it could be, when I'm not studying and working, I enjoy watching Shark Tank. I do. Or I enjoy, watching car racing, whatever it may be. So there's this 4-step framework I just want you to test out. And maybe Deidre, since you're a host, if you would be so kind as to oblige me in conversation. So this is how it would sound. Okay, so it's like, hi, I am a student at the University of the West Indies Mona campus pursuing my degree in, let's say, astrology. My focus is on graduation to become the best astrologist. And then, when I'm not working, I am reading and writing poetry. Obviously, you're going to make it your own. So I'd love Deidre to give it a shot, and then I'll call on someone who I can see on the Zoom chat just to kind of share your four-step process, and then we can move on from there. So Deidre, would you like to give it a go for us?
I'm going to try my best.
Okay, wonderful.
So I am a cultural and creative industries major who enjoys performing arts, reading, writing, and I also enjoy playing football. Even though I may be small in stature, I believe that I am one of the best ballers on the field. How am I doing so far?
Good. Now you've got to talk a little bit about, your experience or on graduation. What are you aiming to do with your degree?
Awesome. So after attaining this degree, I hope to be involved in media and also giving back to my country in the research field for the cultural and creative industry to see how best we can earn economically and build our present economic status through the use of our CCIs.
Wonderful. Fantastic. Really good job. Okay. Does anyone want to come off mute and share their, give it a go? This is not, you're not going to get graded on it. It's just experience. What I like to say, pitching. You're just pitching yourself. It's like an elevator pitch, but it's the first question that kind of sets the tone for who you are. Would anybody like to give it a try? So I am a daughter of 2 teachers, so I definitely know how to select individuals to try. So how about Rihanna Miller or Mike Hemmings, if you'd like to give it a try, I'd be open to listening. We all are. And you also have the opportunity to put it in the chat as well. So if you're not feeling comfortable sharing, you can just definitely put it on the chat. So hopefully this framework is really easy. And you think about it, it's just really 4 things: who you are and what you're doing currently, you know, what are you choosing for your education and why you chose it, you know, what you want to do with that education, and then, you know, sprinkling a little bit of something fun. Now, the reason I always like to say sprinkling a little something fun is because it's personal. And oftentimes relationship building comes from shared experiences. When I was coaching the individual who was successful in the Rhodes Scholarship interview, when we did his prep for his Tell Me About Himself, I think he was a big fan of a TV show, and he was really concerned with sharing about it. And I was like, no, sprinkle it in. And then what do you know? You know, he talked a little bit about, you know, when he wasn't studying or working, what he was up to. And there was a judge who was a scholarship judge, and he like loved that show too. And then suddenly you build that kind of connection and interaction. All right, so, okay, we've got somebody in the chat giving it a go. Okay, example for a high school student, of course. Okay, definitely. So if you're a high school student and you're going to, you know, you're applying for a scholarship for undergrad, I would probably start off by saying, you know, it is my goal to study my undergraduate at the University of the West Indies Mona campus in computer science, because I would love to become a software developer or work in technology in Jamaica. And then I would say, you know, I enjoy what you actually enjoy. So it's not necessarily that you have to, you know, have a current position. Student is a position. So you just say, you know, you're a current student of XYZ high school, you know, aiming to pursue your studies at XYZ undergraduate program because you would like to be what is your aspiring profession? And then you can sprinkle in a little bit of something fun. You know, I really enjoy football. I really enjoy, you know, writing. I recently read a novel on ABC, and it's the same kind of framework. You're just, you know, switching things up. If you're not in undergrad, high school, what do you want to do your undergrad in? Why you want to do that undergrad? And then share a little bit about, you know, something that's personal and fun. Does that help? Okay, all right. So we're gonna do the other questions, which are typical, right? So what are your short-term goals and what are your long-term goals? Now, short-term goals, I always like to think of this as like, you know, within the 0 to 5 year kind of framework. And then long-term could be, you know, 5 to 10, 10 to 15 from then. So you're still figuring life out. So how should you answer this question? Now, I could tell you my short-term goals when I was in secondary school or high school. I do not think I have met those short-term goals, because simply once I started to do different subjects in my undergrad and I started to get exposed to more and more courses, I started to realize, well, you know, I don't want to be a programmer. I prefer being a business analyst, you know, so you start to think about things differently. So really there are 2 questions that I want you to keep in mind. So, you know, you're still figuring life out. You don't have to have it all set. Nobody should know what they want to do at 12, 13, 18. You know, that's an ideal. But it's really, the point of this question is to determine whether you have a forward-looking mindset or you have an idea of your dreams or goals. And then are you also the type of person who has a plan and can articulate that plan? So for example, you know, a scholarship institution wants to give you the money. They want to give the money to the candidate. That's why they have the scholarship. They just want to make sure that the individual, has a plan. They are thinking about what they want to do with the education in the short term, and then potentially in, the long run as well. So here's some tips for you. In the short term, you can discuss your passions, your motivations, and career goals. In the short term, what positions do you see yourself working? What volunteerism, what, experiences do you see yourself gaining through getting the scholarship? And then, after you graduate and you're in industry and they ask you about like, hey, long term, what do you see yourself doing? I always like to tell folks, think beyond the title and think about the impact. So what is the impact that you see yourself making as a result of if they were to give you this scholarship, along with, the benefit of you doing this education? So obviously, sometimes we think that, on graduation, we have all these goals for ourselves and we're gonna make that ripple impact like immediate. And sometimes that happens, but if it doesn't happen, at minimum, you should kind of know, hey, where do you want to see your career go as a result of doing this course of study? And, down the line, what do you see for yourself? So Deidre talked about wanting to make arts economically viable for Jamaica. So I would expect when, or if she's in a scholarship interview, she talks about, in the short term, once I graduate, I see myself working for X company. And then as I gain my skills, I want to marry that with my business aptitude and really develop or partner with ministries of, arts, or, develop international markets and create the appetite for arts and culture in my country. So you're really just showing or highlighting like, hey, this person has a plan for their education. Most people will kind of answer this question very, very surface level. They'll think about it from a title, but I do encourage you to think about it from an impact. The purpose of you going to school is for what reason, and the impact you hope to make is for what. So I will jump also to the why you section. So why you talks about, hey, why should we choose you for this scholarship among other candidates? Now, I always say, don't speak negatively of the other candidates. That's not the goal. The goal is for you to talk about what you understand the scholarship represents and who you are. So oftentimes there's this inclination to be humble. Everybody says, oh, don't brag, be humble. But I like to say, it's not bragging if you did it. Speak your facts and speak what you have done with your academic life or your sports life, whatever it is. You have to create what I call a brag list. And a brag list is really and truly just the things that you're proud of that you have done that tie into the scholarship or the institution. So you really want to be specific, understand what the scholarship represents, and choose a specific trait and hone in on that answer. So for example, here's a scholarship, and you might have different scholarships in your home country, but this is a scholarship. I just put it on here. I just want you to take a look at the last two lines. So it says, we are looking for the kind of people who have the passion, ideas, and influence to provide the solutions and leadership needed. So somebody asks you, hey, why should I choose you over other candidates? I would expect a response that ties back to the type of person that they're looking for from the scholarship, right? So you would talk about how you have used your influence in the past to create solutions, or what ideas you have that add to the scholarship, institution, or demonstrate your passion, right? And Mr. Palmer spoke about this earlier, because you have to do your research to understand what a scholarship institution values. And you do that by visiting the website. You read about the scholarship, you read about folks who have won the award, what they have gone on to do. You can chat with past scholarship recipients to understand, hey, what were they like? What did they say? You can visit social media. Admittedly, I'm not on TikTok, LinkedIn, all these other Facebook, all of these other social medias. But what I love about them is you really can find information out there immediately. And something that I think, you have to be conscious of is it's not like how it was before, where if you needed to find information, you would have to kind of ask people if they knew somebody. In my time, we had encyclopedias. There was no Googling everything, and social media was not as dominant. So for me, I certainly, as someone who I coach individuals and someone who hires people for jobs, I get really frustrated when people have not done their research, because you can literally just go on Google and search and you will find a ton of information. So if you don't do that, it highlights that you're not serious, or certainly you don't have what it takes to kind of take or own, your academic career, or you're not as serious about the scholarship. And then many institutions have webinars. Webinars are informational sessions. And wherever possible, you can go to these webinars, attend them, listen to what they say they value. They might even have someone who won the scholarship in the past who always says, reach out to me if you have questions. And I'll tell you, most people don't reach out to people. And sometimes you can set yourself apart by actually being the person that reaches out to the contact and say, hey, I have an interest. Would you be willing to read my essay or help me prepare for the scholarship? So we'll wrapping things up, on Island Advantage, we've kind of realized that there's a high appetite for, our folks. We love to learn. We want to do it, and we want to make sure that we can do it for free wherever possible. So there's a book for anybody who may not have, they want to do their first degree in the Caribbean, but they might want to study abroad in time. So we have a Secrets to Studying Abroad workbook. We have free resources for you and on our blog, so you can read how to write the scholarship essay, how to network or communicate with institutions, how to kind of position yourself. We have got interview tips, all of it. And then you can sign up so that you can be on our mailing list and get information as it comes. And then we do have some freebies for you, where you can kind of download guides with scholarships. You can watch how to prepare a resume for free. And we're really just trying to demystify the academic process for folks who might want to do it internationally or even regionally. So that's a little bit about the, preparing for a scholarship interview. And we can hopefully take questions and comments on what we talked about today.
Thank you so much, Island Advantage. I am certain that after those two presentations, you are more than ready for your scholarship interviews. Once again, I'd like to just mention a few things that I learned. I'm not going to stay too long on this, but scholarships are very competitive. But luckily, there's something special about you why you would have reached this far. You piqued their interest. Now it's your responsibility to play your part by doing all of these things that have been suggested today to put yourself at a better place of receiving these scholarships. And thankfully, there's a Secrets to Scholarship Abroad workbook, the blog, the website, all of the information is there and available. Speaking about encyclopedias, I'm looking at, whenever I go home, I just look at them and laugh to myself. I'm like, wow, look at life. How one time encyclopedias were the only source, but now we're lucky enough to have, or at our fingertips, access to information online. So thank you so much, Island Advantage. Thank you so much, Mr. Palmer. And now we're opening the floor for questions. I know you have your burning questions. A lot was said, and you want to ensure that you understand. Don't be afraid to ask your questions. So if you have any questions at all, feel free to ask them. And also, can you just give me the website once more, please, Island Advantage? The website.
Yeah, it's islandadvantage.co.
Right, it's very simple, guys. So you know where you can go. So www.islandadvantage.co for all of your scholarship needs. So I have a question, and I'm asking both panelists to respond. What tips would you give for persons who are feeling very nervous and anxious prior to the interview? So they did all the research, they follow the steps, but now they're just so anxious. And what advice would you give them? What tips would you give them? Those persons who are anxious and nervous.
I think, being anxious and nervous is so natural and so real. I feel the same way every time. What I do is like 30 minutes before the interview, I do the things that make me comfortable, make me at ease. So, if I find a quiet space, or I might listen to my favorite song, something that grounds me. And then I also try to visualize how the interview ends. And I have it visualized, obviously, in a positive way, right? It's sometimes I think a big part of anxiousness and being nervous is that we anticipate that it's gonna be a hot mess, right? So I try my best to, visualize that, what if the interview goes really well? I have to go and give it my best. I just have to, I smile, I practice in front of the mirror, different things. And then I just, ease into it, but really visualize success for yourself so that, you don't psych yourself out too much.
All right, thank you so much. And Mr. Palmer, do you have any tips as to how we can, not be nervous or control our
I agree with what was just shared by Alan Advantage. I'm not sure is that your name. I think Advantage. But I think the tips that were shared were interesting. But in general, personally, what I tend to do or what I advise persons to do is, you want to visualize how the interview would go and in a positive way. And you also want to prepare. This is something that you can have control over. Some aspect of it, you can, the basic things that we know that we're going to have to do, present yourself, talk about why you think you are an ideal candidate, for example. So I think you should prepare. And in preparing, you should feel somewhat in control over what it is that you want to say, and that you're clear in your mind. If this question is asked, this is my answer. So you're familiar what you're going to say. You're not blindsided by the questions that they're going to be asking, or at least all of them. And so I think that helps with being less nervous. I mean, it's a good thing to have. We all have them. And so it's always good it tells that you're human, you're not very arrogant, you're in the moment, you're nervous. So yes, that's something that's good. It helps to settle you. And I think if you just prepare and try to stay calm, it's a part of the process. And when it's over, then I think when you look back, ensure that you can say, okay, good, it was not such a hot mess because I prepared, and you feel.
Thank you for that. So preparation is key. All right, we have a next question. So I'm staying with you, Mr. Palmer. How do we stay prepared for multiple rounds of interviews? Because, of course, one scholarship. How do you stay prepared for multiple rounds of interviews?
So multiple rounds with one organization or several organizations?
You can take it from both angles. So,
all right. So you want to ensure. So generally, try saying multiple interviews with one organization. So you've done the first one, okay. So somebody didn't get a scholarship because you showed up, or didn't get a chance to advance because you were there. So that's something good. So you need to bear in mind that, okay, if I'm called back for another interview, it means that I did something, good. So when you're going back, you want to ensure that you do better with the same organization. You want to ensure that you revise your answers. And we all have this. When we do an interview, we all get this in our head, okay, that didn't go so well. I don't think I answered that question well. So you need to be very reflective in the process, even if it's for a different company. You did something with NCB, don't make the same mistake with a Scotiabank, for example. So ensure that you are learning from the mistakes or the mishaps or the pointers that you would have gotten. Maybe I know sometimes some of the scholarships, you can get feedback on the spot. Somebody might say something to you, oh, that's a wonderful presentation. Oh, that's a wonderful idea. You bring that to another interview that you go. So if it works well, or if it didn't work well, you reflect on it. How can I improve? Okay, this, I gave a joke and it looked like that joke worked. Or my something fun that I mentioned, somebody related to it. So, you bring it to the next interview. So that's how you try to learn from the experience. Don't just take it, okay, moving along. Learn from the experience and try to evolve and to develop your responses, your personal posture and your presentation when you go to different interviews.
All right, thank you. And Island Advantage, would you like to add on to that? What, if not, I have a question for you.
I try to tell folks to treat rejection as a game. Just kind of have as much fun as you can in the process. It's all part of the process. You will kind of skill up and get, as many interviews as you can is always a good thing. You may not always, get the opportunity, but you're gaining great opportunities and like communicating and learning and improving. So try your best to just see it as, part of the process and just give it your best and just try. The hardest thing is, just try and put yourself out there for sure.
To try and put ourselves out there. Still with you, Island Advantage. If we make a mistake, now this is something that a lot of us dread, but let's say it does happen, unfortunately. If we make a mistake in the interview, how exactly do we redeem ourselves?
Yeah, of course. So mistakes can kind of fall into a couple of categories. Let's say you didn't. Let's say you may have missed the question. If you're nervous, you can always ask them to, rephrase the question. Sometimes people might say, "Can you repeat the question, please?" And that's okay. But you can also ask them to, rephrase the question because they might say it in a different way that allows you to be able to maybe answer it. If you want to start over. So sometimes you might be so nervous, you start to answer and then you get kind of flustered. You can say, "I apologize. I'd love to give responding to this question another go." What I would say is oftentimes folks don't necessarily give themselves enough time to make sure they understand the question before they respond. And that's part of being anxious. But you can pause before you respond to think about the question. And if you make a mistake, short of if you throw it on the table and run outside, it's okay. Mistakes, being human, it's just all part of the process of communicating. And you can always say, I apologize. I'd love to kind of start over, may I? And kind of go from there. And don't beat yourself up. It's all just part of the process.
Yes, don't beat yourselves up at all, because if you stay focused on your error, then you won't necessarily perform as best as you could have throughout the rest of the interview. So brush it off. We're all human and we make mistakes. But hey, that's a great way for us to recover from the mistakes. And that's a great presentation in total. We have had two exceptional speakers today who have taught us how to tackle that scholarship interview. And I know for sure, when the time comes, you'll not only do well in the interview, but you'll also become the recipient. Thank you so much, Island Advantage. We have a question here from Mike Hemmings. He's asking, what about attire? What's the best thing to wear to an interview?
I always think you should go professional. And if you're not sure, you can, search business professional. I err on the side of being professional. It may not mean that you need to wear a suit if you're a guy with like a jacket, but certainly, a long sleeved shirt with tie. And if you are female, something that's professional, business professional. Because even if they are in the comfort of their organization and that's not their culture, you really want to show that you take the opportunity seriously. and that you present your best self. And part of presenting your best self can be, making sure that you wear the attire that is professional. Once you get onboarded, if that's not the culture of the organization, if the organization is more laid back and they don't wear suit, tie, and heels and all of that, they'll tell you on day one. But given that it's, your first interview, your first time meeting them, just present yourself as best as you can.
All right, so thank you. Palmer, would like to add on to that by any chance?
No, I think I agree with what was shared.
Awesome. And I just love how throughout the entire presentation, both the presenters' presentations were actually intertwined, and we were able to learn a lot today. And I just really want to thank you. I'm not sure if anyone else has any other questions. All right, doesn't seem to be so. Well, thank you so much for taking your time out to help us to be scholarship interview ready. And of course, this is going to help to push us in the right direction as we aim to uh, we aim to build ourselves. As you know, you said we're the CEO of a brand. You so thank you so much. And at this time, I'm going to invite a very special young man, youth premier awardee, national youth parliamentarian, youth advocate for the youth advocate, a youth researcher at UNESCO Caribbean, and of course an intern at UNDP Jamaica. No stranger, no stranger at all. This is Jamel Brown, and he's here to give us his testimonial for, as in case you did not know, he's also a scholarship recipient. And now he's going to give his testimonial on how that whole process went and all the work. So handing over to you now.
Good day, everyone. Good day. Okay, good day, everyone. Happy to be here today. Given my internet is kind of moving, so I cannot turn on my camera right now, but I'm happy to be here today, and I wanted to take the time out to talk about my scholarship application and the process of going through all that. It can be very hectic when you're going through it because you're facing so much.
Jamel, you're muted. I'm not sure if that was intentional.
Sorry about that. It was my internet. As I was saying, I'm happy to be here today to talk about the scholarship application process and applying for that scholarship because it can be very hectic to apply for that scholarship. So the scholarship that I received over the years is the Jeremy and Devil Foundation Scholarship, the Betting Gaming and Lotteries Commission Scholarship Fund. I have also received the JMMB John Duncan Foundation Scholarship and several other scholarships over the years. And I realized there is a multiple layer to applying for that scholarship because you get to doubt yourself. You worry about the process. Are you good enough? Are you smart enough? Are you able to do what is needed to represent not just you but the scholarship itself? And I can say you only can know that once you put yourself forward for the opportunity. You cannot doubt yourself because if we wait until the moment that we're ready for that particular opportunity, we will never be ready. As I always say to myself, put yourself forward and you will get what you want because you cannot become successful if you're not able to take risks. So when applying for that scholarship, in particular doing that interview, you have to be aware of researching that company, of being a part of researching the company so that you can pull up certain areas of how you can be interviewed. Like, for example, I noticed that Richard stated that in his strategy that you have to reach out to past scholars. If you don't research a company or go on your scholarship page, you won't our foundation page, you won't know the past scholars that have received the scholarship over the years so that you may reach out to them. Like for example, I researched the company JMB last year, and I went on their foundation social media page, and I found several scholarship recipients I could reach out to and express my interest. And they reached out back to me, helped me with the questions, how to do that interview, and all my doubt was cleared. Like I know what I wanted and how it was going to get done. And also in that interview, if you know certain things that is going to help you, say it. Like for example, if you know your vision, if you know that this degree is going to do this for Jamaica, like nation building, say it before they even ask that of you. 'Cause it will show that you're very comprehensive. You know what you want from this scholarship and what this scholarship can do for you as a nation builder and as a youth that is going into that degree. Because no one is going to fund a degree that cannot give back to Jamaica, that cannot build a society. They always focus on nation building and sustainable development. And we're going into a period of Vision 2030. Everybody wants to be a part of Vision 2030. So what is your plan? Know your vision. And what I realized over the years when persons are doing that interview, and and persons ask them that question about what are their vision for the future, then they don't know. They're not sure about it. They say they don't know, and that right there is a red flag. You cannot be living your life and do not know. Even if you do not know, make it, fake it, you make it. Because at the end of the day, you need that scholarship. You need to map out your future. And what I've learned from this scholarship coach of mine, you have to have an overarching arc, like overarching arc 1, 2, and 3. So one is where you start with the introduction. Who are you as a person? Who are you as a person? Then 2, now you figure out what you want to do. And 3 is your vision, your future, your area. How this degree gonna get you in that career in the next 5 to 10 years. And these are things that can play into the interview because when you go into interview, you're mentally prepared for any question that they may ask relating to your career area, relating to your degree area per se. So don't be blindsided by anything. So that's my tip for you guys. So research the company, reach out to past scholars and know what is needed. So that's it from me today. And this event is being done by me, my committee, and also the community students office to help students who are really in need of that scholarship. Because I noticed over the years since coming to UWI, there haven't been a scholarship week. So this is the first scholarship week geared towards helping students, and I really love that. Each day is dedicated to a different initiative that can build you as you go on that scholarship application process. So this year, you can't say it's not meant for you, it's not you should apply. This year, you put yourself forward with the right tools, the right instruments that is needed, because this is being done to help you on the right path, and that is it from me.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Brown. So you heard it from Mr. Palmer and Island Advantage. Um, and we also heard it from Mr. Brown, who is in charge of this week. We're really grateful for a scholarship week like this, as many of us are also unaware of how best we can put ourselves out there to actually attain these scholarships. So I want to thank you so much, Mr. Brown, and your team. I want to thank you, Mr. Palm. I want to thank you, Island. I want to thank you, Island Advantage, for all that information that you have shared today, as it is definitely going to help us moving forward. So this is Scholarship Week, right? And we're coming to the close of this event, but I just want to touch on tomorrow, as tomorrow is the final day. And tomorrow we'll be looking at building your professional brand. You can't afford to miss. Same time, 1 o'clock. And we have guest speaker David Thomas from He's a VMFET ambassador. We have Odin Brooks. He is a youth advocate. And we have Christina Edwards, who's an international relations specialist. And this session will be hosted by Christina Daughtry, commuting students advisor. So tomorrow you can't afford to miss the final day of Scholarship Week, which is being being hosted by the UA Commuters EAC. And if you have missed the first few days, don't you dare worry. It is on the YouTube channel. I'm going to share with you the link for one of the episodes. I believe this is the one, the first day. And after that, you can just go on the channel and see the other episodes. This is a wonderful, wonderful experience, and it was my pleasure guiding you through the proceedings. Please do use this information to better yourselves, and I wish you all the best. All the best with those scholarship interviews. Um, this is Gigi Wadsworth, and this was day 3 of Scholarship Week. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.